Chapter 15, System Update. The next day. Hokage's office, Hokage Tower. This is the result of the interrogations conducted by myself, Yamanaka Inoichi, and Mitarashi Anko, Hokage-sama. Ibiki stated as he placed a pair of scrolls on the desk. One of them spilled his guts before I could even do more than mildly threaten him. With the information I got from him, I was able to authorize the use of the Yamanaka clan's mind-reading techniques. The scarred man regretted the fact that it was illegal to use the Yamanaka clan's Haijutsu on Konoha citizens with only the suspicion of wrongdoing or even minor misdemeanors. And unfortunately, civilians and retired shinobi trespassing into a Category 1 restricted areas, open to all active shinobi but not civilians or retired shinobi, without permission, was only a misdemeanor. Using a jutsu in a public place was another offense, but since the Kekai ninjutsu they'd used only kept people in or out without doing any damage, it was catalogued as a misdemeanor on the same lines as disturbing the public peace. Taken on their own, both actions were fairly minor crimes that would have resulted in the group only facing fines and possibly a few days in holding cells. If someone hadn't spilled the beans anyway. But since one of them had sung like the proverbial canary, Ibiki could, and had, used that confession to use the skill of Inoichi to parse through the minds of the other 13 members of the Spandex Brigade. He had to credit the boy for his to-the-point nomenclature and find out exactly what they were up to. Sarutobi folded his hands on his desk. And the summary. All 14 are guilty of premeditated attempted murder against one Uzumaki Naruto. The scarred Tokuho stated simply, his tone containing no emotion, merely reciting the facts as they had been discovered, as well as numerous cases of minor harassment, intimidation and price gouging of the same individual. It's only a shame that they aren't active duty ninja, so we can't simply court-martial them. There was a touch of disdain added to that final sentence. The Hokage privately agreed with Ibiki's opinion, but unlike Danzo, he respected the rule of law and didn't twist it to suit his vengeful vendetta, particularly when Naruto hadn't received anything worse than a few scratches from the encounter. If they had managed to seriously harm Naruto, on the other hand, he would have given Mitarashi Anko free rein to use them as instructional test dummies for the newest recruits in T&I. She had been asking for some prisoners to practice on recently and, shaking himself out of the wistful daydream, Sarutobi nodded at Ibiki. Good work. Now, how to punish them? There's enough evidence to send them to the Broken Branch. Ibiki suggested absently. The Broken Branch was the civilian equivalent to the Konoha Strict Correctional Facility, where ninja cases severe enough to warrant imprisonment outside of Konoha itself, yet mild enough to not warrant being sent to the Hazuka-jo or executed, were imprisoned. Whereas the KSCF was in the middle of an active volcano, the Broken Branch was in the middle of the largest lake in Hai-no-Kuni, as the water walking exercise was usually beyond the skills of even chakra-active civilians. True. Sarutobi nodded magnanimously, and for the civilians among them that will probably be the best idea, but a third of them are retired shinobi, which would make escape a definite possibility. The head of T&I snorted. He sincerely doubted that any of the Spandex Brigade he made a note to have that nickname appended to their files could water walk more than 2 steps without losing concentration and taking a swim. Then again, when one was locked in prison, training would likely be one of the few things one could do to pass the time, and even the most out-of-shape retiree was a danger to any other civilian contained in the prison. And their crimes are just barely mild enough to not warrant the KSCF. Plus in their current shape, I doubt they'd survive the conditions it would put them in. The Hokage mused. Hazuka-jo is of course out of the question and the internal prison cells are somewhat full at the moment with former members of the civilian council, at least until their crimes are fully processed and they can be transferred to the Broken Branch themselves. Ibiki smirked grimly with satisfaction. The retired members of the civilian council had thought that their little schemes were all buried and hidden from prying eyes. Well, the ninja counselors had been more than happy to carry out a bit of forensic paperwork and, wouldn't you know it, there was a positive plethora of crimes committed by the former members of the civilian council, double book accounting, bribery, embezzlement of public funds and other varied and distasteful crimes. It was actually a bit surprising that they'd managed to get away with it for so long. Ibiki personally blamed it on both the chaos surrounding the long-term effects of rebuilding after Kyuubi attack nearly leveled the village, and the focus that was put on keeping an eye out for outside threats after the Hyuga incident. If you focus too much on watching for enemies at the gates, you tend to miss the ones forming within the walls. Then there were the cream of the crop, the conspiracy charges. Conspiracy to undermine the strength of the weapon of the Konohagakure shinobi forces, otherwise known as the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, Uzumaki Naruto. He thought to himself grimly. While he wasn't a fan of classifying the boy, or any of his fellow shinobi, as if they were a mindless tool, it was what the paperwork required in order to get what needed done. That and there was a bit of poetic irony at getting the people that had refused to treat the kid as a human being by classifying him as something else. After all, military assets were incredibly important to a shinobi village's survival and sabotaging them was a capital offense. He wondered how those fat and arrogant former counselors would appreciate a life sentence to Spartan quarters and bland food. Not well, he knew. In an unrelated development, the few remaining troublesome elements on council had hunkered down, likely hoping to wait out the storm. There are still free cells in the maximum security wing, he pointed out. Sarutobi raised an eyebrow. The ones designed for A-rank ninja that are suspended above a pit of fire and where the occupants are fed via random duct chutes. Yes, as much as I am tempted to allow it, I cannot. The old man sighed regretfully. Still, I think I can throw together a prison convoy sooner rather than later. Say 2 days. But where to keep them until the former council members are moved? I could see my way to keeping them in T&I. Ibiki offered with a slight shrug, if it's just for 2 or 3 days. Business is slow. That would be very good of you, Ibiki-kun. Sarutobi smiled. Make sure Anko-chan knows that they aren't for her to practice on. Hi. The Tokuho nodded. Anko would pout and complain, but he had long years of practice at ignoring her antics to draw on. How's the kid? He was unharmed by either the chakra mutations or the spandex brigade. Sarutobi answered with a sigh. I gave him a B-rank futon jutsu as a reward for doing well, although he was irritated that all of his hard work in training ground 13 was negated thanks to a bunch of idiots wearing spandex, to use his own words. Ibiki nodded absently. It was a perfectly understandable response to having several months' worth of effort undone in less than a day. Particularly, when it's due to someone else interfering. He still plans to tackle it again. Of course. The Hokage smiled at the memory of the determined set to his surrogate grandson's jaw as he declared his intent to conquer the 13th training ground. Once Naruto-kun sets his mind to something, it is very, very rare that he is dissuaded or prevented from accomplishing it. It's a good trait to have in a shinobi. A lot of the brats these days don't have the grit needed to keep to it. Ibiki agreed absently. With your permission, I had better be getting back to T&I. Enko will be getting antsy by now. By all means. Sarutobi nodded. The last time Enko got antsy, she went on a sake and dango binge that took 3 of her monthly paychecks to cover. As Ibiki left the office, Sarutobi regretfully returned his attention to his never-to-be-sufficiently bedamned paperwork. He longed for the chance to sit back and read one of Jiraiya-kun's masterpieces, Ika Ika, but the necessities of this damn job prevented him from doing so until after lunch, at the earliest. Uzumaki Naruto's apartment, Amekage Apartments. A single eyebrow twitched as one Uzumaki Naruto stared at the display in front of him, which persistently insisted that there was still a good 6 hours left before the update was complete, whatever a system update was when it was at home. Oj. He groaned, what a pain in the ass. Looking around his living room, he got up and padded, dressed in his relatively new training clothes, into a modestly sized room that had been the smaller bedroom of the apartment. He had converted it into a sort of armory shortly after moving in. All of his kunai and shuriken were stored here, when he wasn't at the academy or in a training ground, which freed up room in his inventory. Also there was an older mannequin that had what Tenten and her father referred to as the storm armor on it. Naruto had placed the updated armored shoulder pad atop the top section after he had received it from the weapons mad girl. He had to admit that the dark royal blue of the suit looked intimidating. He doubted that he'd bother with the suit for the lowly D ranks that would make up the majority of a genin's early introduction to the life of a shinobi. He'd noticed several groups of genin running around doing various chores while being supervised by a jonin and had, thanks to his boosted int, connected the dots. Thank you, gamer. He'd have to find a suitable D rank outfit, which required another visit to the Higurashi store at some point. After accidentally calling Ten-chan, the previous day, he was a bit worried about that. Girls, in his experience, hated it when you called them by a nickname that they hadn't given you permission to use. Resting on a rack next to the suit were Sumaira and Tsubaki, his dual tanto. He was still only level 14 thanks to the stupid update and he wanted to use them in anger, against actual enemies rather than target kun dummies. He stared longingly at them before sighing and heading to practice his fuinjutsu and calligraphy. 6 hours of practice later. Ding. Asterisk. Looking up from a stack of Type -1 storage scrolls that he had churned out in the past few hours, Naruto grinned as he saw a screen appear with 2 simple words on it. Update complete. Finally. He yelled and pressed the screen, making it disappear and another one appear in its place. Thank you for your patience. The gamer has finished updating. Any changes relevant to you are listed below. Jutsu that have been fully leveled or are level 80 plus can now be invoked without vocal intonation. It will add 10 CP to the chakra cost, however. You will now be assigned up to 5 daily quests, each day. Completion of these quests before the end of the day grants you a cash reward in addition to the quest rewards as well as a 10% chance at receiving a rare jutsu, weapon or item of clothing at the end of the week if all 7 days worth of daily quests are completed. Random encounters will now be further randomized, with random numbers of monsters depending on your level. The actions of the Spandex Brigade have raised the levels at Training Ground 13 to account for your current strength. As this is through no fault of your own, your level cap has been raised to level 17 until you graduate as an apology. The relationship system has been updated, with females possessing a heart next to their names that will be colored to indicate their affection for you. Black for negative feelings, gray for neutral feelings, blue for positive feelings and pink for romantic feelings. Additionally, if that person is in love with you, the heart will expand and contract slowly. Note that the color indicates only the general area of the person's feelings for you, not the exact level. For that, please regard the relationship screen. At the end of the day, you will be shown a list of all levels earned in skills and jutsu on that day. This is to allow you to gain an overall grasp of your leveling habits. A copy of all jutsu that you know has been placed in your inventory so you can find them, and then inform the Hokage. These duplicates cannot be absorbed to learn a jutsu or improve your understanding of the jutsu. This will also be done for all future jutsu that you learn. Naruto whistled. Those were some impressive updates. He didn't understand why the entire gamer needed to be disabled to have all of these updates put in as it had that auto-update thingy, didn't it? Meh. Didn't matter. Closing the window, an eyebrow twitched as yet another window popped up in its place. Calculating levels gained over the last 12 hours. Reading Konohagakure Core Eidos logs. Reading activity logs of designate, Uzumaki Naruto, the gamer. Calculating accumulated experience. Estimating levels. Done. Calligraphy has gained 2 levels. Basic Fuinjutsu has gained 2 levels. Cooking has gained a level. Detect Bloodlust has gained a level. Intermediate Hokage Taijutsu has gained a level. Observe has gained a level. Futon, Senfukyu has gained a level. Doden, Gansetsuken has gained a level. Holy crap. Naruto whistled, now that's impressive. Oh, the jutsu Gigi gave me yesterday. Stampeding into his bedroom, he grabbed the scroll from where he'd left it resting on his nightstand and grinned as the usual window popped up. You have acquired the Futon, Fujinheki, Jutsu scroll. Do you wish to learn this? Note: you are now limited to learning 3 jutsu per day. Regular skills are not limited in this manner. A duplicate will be placed in your inventory. YN. Ah man, Naruto complained before shrugging. He couldn't actually remember ever getting more than 3 jutsu scrolls a day anyway, so it wasn't that big of a deal at the moment. With that thought in his mind, he hit the Y button. As always, it was a beautiful sight to see the scroll dissolve into blue shards and spiral around his body before vanishing inside his chest, but he also saw a tendril of blue shards entering a space that he usually pulled his inventory items from to his right. Huh, you have learned Futon, Fujinheki. Futon, Fujinheki active LV1, 000. Wind style. Wind blade wall is an advanced application of wind elemental manipulation that initially creates a wall made from condensed wind in front of the user. This is one of the wall techniques, with the others being Doden, Doryuheki, Suiden, Sujinheki and Kaden, Karyuheki. There is no wall technique for Raiden Jutsu. With time and experience, the user can strengthen the wall and even make it cut anyone or anything that touches it with thousands of wind blades that run across its surface, as well as erecting it anywhere within the user's line of sight. Hand signs. Dragon bird, dragon rat, dragon bird. Range. 1 meter from user. Creates a meter-long, foot-wide and meter-tall wall of wind between the user and the enemy. Has 55 durability points. Weak against Kaden Jutsu, doubling the damage of any such jutsu that passes through it. Very effective against Raiden Jutsu. Damage suffered from such jutsu reduced by half. Cost 67 CP to activate and 14 CP per minute to maintain. Naruto winced a bit as the amount of knowledge needed for the powerful wind jutsu flowed into his mind and caused a mild headache. This was only the second B-rank jutsu he had ever learned, so it wasn't all that surprising that learning the details of such a powerful jutsu would cause a bit of pain, at least until he got used to it. I can't wait to give this a try. Naruto grinned, but first, he pulled out a few scroll racks and stacked the scrolls from his inventory on them, with a rack dedicated to each level of jutsu. The E-rank scrolls held the Henge, Nawanuke, Kawarimi and Kakurimi no jutsu, with most of the rest falling into the C-rank jutsu section. He idly wondered why more jutsu weren't in the D-rank section as he placed his 2 B ranks in their rack. Quite a few seemed underpowered to be C rank, but he recalled that power wasn't solely what determined jutsu rankings. There was also chakra consumption, chakra control requirements, adaptability, and other criteria that determined the rank of a jutsu. Okay, destructive power was a pretty big benchmark of the rank of a jutsu, ninjutsu anyway, but Naruto had learned of the other ways people used when ranking jutsu. Well then, let's go and see how different the training ground is. The blonde orphan muttered and headed for his armory. He grabbed his kunai holster and filled it with projectiles, live ones, before turning to regard Tsubaki and Sumair. As he wasn't an actual ninja yet, he legally couldn't walk around with weapons strapped to him, aside from kunai and shuriken. But the loophole was quite simple: storage scrolls. He grabbed his tanto and sealed them inside a scroll, sliding it inside his lesser Fujin jacket's pocket before heading out. The glares from the civilian populace had increased, which was a scary thing to happen considering they had been on death glares beforehand. Naruto could almost feel his detect bloodlust skills express bar rising like a barometer in the desert at midday. Gotta love the wonderful glares from those ever so lovable civilians. He smirked to himself. Naruto knew that his bloodthirst detection skill had saved his ass several times and that the civilians glaring at him had helped to level it up quite nicely. Those little nuggets of information would probably give any and all of those who glared at him a heart attack. The smug grin on his face made several of those people glaring at him redouble their glares in fury. Detect bloodlust has leveled up. LV9 LV10. He. Irony, you are a wonderful bitch sometimes, particularly when you're on my side. Naruto thought to himself as he purposely added a little skip to his step, wondering absently just how much extra skill grinding he could pull out of this. Gate into Training Ground 13. Naruto's eyebrow twitched as he heard the snarls of monsters inside the training ground. He was really hoping that his Gigi punished those morons of the Spandex Brigade for undoing all of his hard work on the training ground, and even ended up making it worse. Reaching out, Naruto tapped the gate and made the window appear. Reading it made him growl in irritation. Training Area 13. Which area do you want to enter? Area 1 LV12+. Area 2 LV13+. Area 3 LV14+. Area 4 LV15+. Area 5 LV16+. Area 6 LV17+. Area 7 LV19+. Area 8 LV20+. Area 9 LV21+. Area 10 LV22+. Area 11 LV24+. Area 12 LV25+. Area 13 LV27+. The levels of the individual areas hadn't just gone up, they'd shot up like weeds. Area 13 had previously been restricted to level 20 and over, and now it was level 27 and over. Gah, he was going to have to prank someone when he got out of this place just to blow off some steam, he was so pissed. Gamer's mind activated. Calmly does it. He chanted to himself as his temper was forcefully brought to heel. Say what you will, but that power was just too damn useful at times. Reaching out, he jabbed, area 1 foot, and the gate creaked open, just as eerily as it had done the first time. Squaring his shoulders and palming a handful of shuriken in each hand, Naruto advanced into the first sub-area. In terms of appearance, the forest hadn't changed, but the atmosphere was slightly oppressive. He could almost feel the malice coming from the chakra mutations in the place. Okay, so the original monsters here were squirrels, he muttered as he advanced, wonder if that's different now. Skirting around the trees, Naruto spotted an iron-banded wooden chest sitting at the base of an especially thick tree that he could have sworn hadn't been there the last time he'd been through the sub-area. Evidently the chakra saturation had mutated some of the trees as well now. Cautiously approaching the chest, the blond boy barely touched it when his Detect Bloodthirst skill screamed at him to dodge to the left. Throwing himself to the side, Naruto gaped at what had lunged at him. It was, superficially, a rabid red squirrel, except it was as large as the more powerful, gnashing gray squirrels, and had several bone plates across its body that seemed to act like armor in addition to the razor-sharp claws and fangs. LV-12 Ravening Rabid Red Squirrel. So the monsters getting powered up added a word to their names. Weird. With a roll, a jump and two well-trained flicks of his wrists, Naruto pelted the squirrel with 10 shuriken all at once from a meter in the air, something he had never tried before. Usually it was only 3 shuriken per hand, not 5, so he was looking forward to seeing if he developed a skill from it. He could have tried to create it at the shurikenjutsu range at his apartment building, but he had discovered that it took ages to make a skill using repeated actions outside of combat, whereas in the heat of combat, they developed in a few fights, which could be as short as 10 minutes or as long as an hour. The threat of being harmed by the chakra mutations was somehow not a concern for Naruto. The giant chakra mutation, now the size of a large dog, shrieked as several of the metal-throwing stars pelted its body, sinking deep into its flesh. Once it recovered, it glared at Naruto and bared its fangs before pouncing at him claws first. Drawing a pair of kunai, Naruto danced around the mutation, scoring cut after cut on it while avoiding the swipes of its claws and froth-filled mouth. Although it did score a couple of glancing blows on him, the ravening rabid red squirrel finally fell, covered in cuts. You have defeated a ravening rabid red squirrel. You gain 300 express. As a result of a specific action, you have learned the cluster throw skill. Cluster throw active LV1, 000. Throw enough mud at a wall, and some of it will stick. That is the basis behind this little technique. It is only usable with shuriken and kunai. By throwing 5 shuriken kunai from each hand, you can deal great damage to the enemy. While it is possible to combine this technique with quick draw techniques, it is impossible to gain the full effect from them without possessing a holster on each leg. 50% chance to fumble the shuriken. Adds +2 to the damage of each shuriken that strikes its target. User suffers from an aim penalty of -5 to hit at long and medium ranges. As a result of repeated actions, you have learned the Short Blades Mastery skill. Short Blades Mastery passive LV1, 000. A short blade is defined as any bladed weapon the length of a tanto or shorter. These weapons include tanto, yoroidoshi, kabutowari, kaken and kunai. All of these weapons are seen as being weak or useless compared with larger weapons, such as swords, spears or even maces, but in the hands of a master, these short weapons can be just as deadly. Adds +1 to all damage dealt by the user while wielding short blades. All skills involving short-bladed weapons have a 5% higher experience gain. The chance of learning skills involving short blades is raised by 10% while wielding them. Okay, this is so damn cool. Naruto grinned. Now what's in this chest? Opening it was rather interesting. Golden light shone from the contents for a moment before dimming and fading away, revealing a belt with a bronze circular buckle, a stack of Ryo notes and a necklace shaped like a biwa. Belt of lesser improved muscular regeneration. Accessory. A belt that uses a cunning application of fuinjutsu to enhance the growth and development of the user's muscles. At least that was attempted. What the creator of this item actually got was a belt that improved the regeneration of the muscles after exertion. Needless to say, he wasn't happy about creating this by accident, but it still sold well. His naming sense sucked though. Doer, 60/60ths. While worn, the user's training to do with STR has an increased effect, improving by 25%. Charm of Benzaiden. Accessory. Benzaiden, commonly known as Benton of the 7 Lucky Gods, is commonly depicted with a musical instrument, typically either a biwa or a vina. This charm has been blessed by one of her priests and calls upon her aspect as a goddess of monetary fortune to bring about good luck in monetary gains. This effect raises the amount of money the wearer finds in treasure chests and from fallen monsters. Raises monetary loot from treasure chests and monsters by 10%. Useful. He commented as he pulled the necklace on and snapped the belt closed around his waist before picking up the cash, which looked a bit thicker than it did before he put the necklace on. You gain 450 Ryo. Well then, let's get to clearing out this area. Naruto grinned as he collected the loot from the fallen squirrel, just some Ryo. The act of clearing out the first sub-area of TG-13 was somewhat cathartic for Naruto, who was feeling more than slightly irritated at the Spandex Brigade's stupidity. Hadn't they ever been told not to use ninjutsu in a chakra-saturated area like TG-13 before? It boggled belief. He took down 3 more ravening rabid red squirrels in quick succession, suffering only minor wounds in doing so, about 50 HP all told. After he collected the loot from the last corpse more Ryo, all he'd been getting from the squirrels, he suddenly found himself in the middle of a clearing and facing 3 chakra mutations, 2 ravening rabid red squirrels and what looked like a more heavily mutated version of the gnashing gray squirrel. This one had very, very large fangs and an equally large head to carry them. LV-13 nasty gnashing gray squirrel. What is with the alliterating naming sense here? Shaking off that thought, Naruto charged in with a kunai in each hand. With a snarl, the gray squirrel seemed to order the smaller red ones forward to countercharge him. Dodging 2 red squirrels at once was hard work, much harder than when he only had a single opponent. Fortunately for him, the chakra mutations had all the teamwork of a slab of butter and a saw, i.e. none whatsoever. This allowed him to make the 2 squirrels attack each other some of the time when they swiped and missed him. Eventually, Naruto managed to wear the 2 down and jam kunai into the back of their heads, killing them. He had a moment to bask in the glory before he got bowled over by the charge of that nasty gnashing gray squirrel. He was forced to leave his kunai in the heads of the ravening rabid red squirrels as he grappled with the gray monster, which was at least half again as big as its weaker companions. Get, whack, off, wham, thwack, me. Naruto roared as he punched the chakra mutation's throat multiple times to emphasize his words. At the last blow, the squirrel finally retreated back with a leap, spitting out flecks of blood that stained its massive teeth. Fuck this. Naruto growled and ran through some hand signs, futon, senfukyu. Bringing his right hand up to his mouth, he fired off 3 wind spheres at the squirrel. It managed to dodge 2, but the third slammed into its tail, severing it when the projectile detonated on impact. The wail of pain from the mutation was deafening. You have blown off a limb. Nasty gnashing gray squirrel is now suffering from the badly bleeding status. Naruto blinked at that. Last time he checked, spiraling wind sphere didn't do that. Making a note to check the entry for the jutsu later, the blonde orphan leapt over to the dead squirrels and ripped his kunai out of their skulls. A passive glance told him that they wouldn't be much good as thrown weapons thanks to the blood all over them. The red squirrels seemed to have developed some kind of thick, sticky blood that reduced the throwing damage of the weapons by quite a bit. That gave him an idea. Discarding them, the academy student ran through more hand signs. Suiten ninpo, mizwame bakuho. He spat a great wad of the sticky water at the squirrel, who was still shrieking in agony. The massive wad of sticky goop, about the size of a toddler, slammed into the face of the monster with a wet, thud, sound. With a muffled growl, the squirrel tried to bite through the taffy-like substance, only to find its jaws trapped in the goo. It then tried to tear the mizwame bakuho from its face, only to discover that doing so trapped its forepaws and left it all but helpless. Visions of all the pranks he could do with this stuff danced through Naruto's mind as he threw kunai and shuriken at the squirrel until it died. Oh boy, he was so looking forward to this. You have slain a nasty gnashing gray squirrel. You gained 450 express. You have leveled up. LV14 LV15. You have 5 attribute points to spend. Suiten ninpo, mizwame bakuho, has leveled up. LV2 LV3. Futon, senfukyu no jutsu, has leveled up. LV2 LV3. Shurikenjutsu, has gained a level. LV15 LV16. As a result of repeated actions, you have gained access to the evasion skill. Evasion passive LV4, 04.51. Being able to tank the attack of an opponent is all very well, but why do that if you don't have to? Dodge, swerve, evade and jump around your enemies as if they weren't even there. Passively raises the chance to evade the taijutsu and bukijutsu attacks of the enemy by 24.5%. Passively raises the chance to evade the shurikenjutsu attacks of the enemy by 20%. Passively raises the chance to evade the ninjutsu attacks of the enemy by 15%. Finally, Naruto practically screamed.
Enjoy. Now he could finally wield his Tanto, and maybe his Greater Fujin t-shirt, as well. Then, something occurred to him. Hey, wait a minute. Why the hell did I only fight a gray squirrel? A window popped up right on cue. Chakra oversaturation. Due to the actions of the Spandex Brigade, the training ground has entered oversaturation mode. This means that the area is positively overflowing with chakra, mutating and empowering the denizens that dwell within it even more than a regular saturation would. In order to purge this sub-area of chakra for good, you must empty the sub-area of chakra mutations every day this week. Then, when you face the sub-area boss, you will eliminate the oversaturation and saturation effects for good. Or at least for another decade or so. Happy hunting. One of Naruto's eyes started to twitch rapidly. You have got to be shitting me.
Chapter 16. Berserk Fox Squirrel, Secret Revealed. Higurashi home. Tenten jumped as her mother's hand landed on her shoulder. She had been spacing out as she polished a kunai and so hadn't heard her approach. Okawa-san. Sorry dear. The shopkeeper smiled. She was starting to feel a bit concerned for her daughter. The girl had been absently polishing the same kunai for the past hour while staring out into space. Is there something wrong, Tenten? The bun-haired girl blinked before looking away, a blush on her face. You could tell. Considering how you've been polishing the same kunai for the past hour, I think even your father could tell. Kanae said dryly, making her daughter flush deeper in embarrassment. I went to deliver the last part of the storm suit to Naruto yesterday. Tenten put the kunai, which had been polished to the point that the metal had been worn thin and nearly broken, down and picked up another one as she spoke, her eyes not leaving the metal. Yes, Tatsuhiko said he'd sent you to act as a delivery girl. The older woman nodded. Did something happen? Naruto called me, Ten-chan, by accident, and he blushed. The aspiring weapons mistress admitted. I kinda blushed too. It was nice. Kanae had to suppress a smile at that. It was obvious that Tenten was growing fond of the Kyuubi Jinchuriki and that he was growing fond of her as well. She hadn't been happy with Neji being the focus of her daughter's affections. From her own interactions with the young Hyuga prodigy, the boy had seemed quite self-absorbed, which was never good in a relationship. To be young again, she sighed. Okawa-san, Tenten whined. Now Ten-chan, it isn't the first time someone's called you that. Kanae said with a small smile. Is all this embarrassment from you getting called it by a boy or is it because he called you it without your permission? The genin Kunoichi blushed again. Kinda sorta both. He's the first boy in my age range to treat me like a serious shinobi and as a friend without looking down on me. Evenly does it in a weird way when I can't keep up with his and Guy's training sessions. Naruto just doesn't. She was honest enough with herself to admit that she was, without question, the weakest member of Team Guy. While capable enough with melee weapons, her specialty had always been ranged combat, which left her vulnerable to the 2 taijutsu specialists that she had as teammates. Both Neji and Lee were at least Jonin level when it came to their particular taijutsu styles, but at her best she'd only put herself as mid-chunin level with her own fighting style, and even then the Sokoken was relatively weak compared to the Goken and Juken. Granted, when it came to Shurikenjutsu, her own specialty, she was almost Jonin level herself, while Neji and Lee both barely being Chunin level. Unfortunately she could never fully bring that skill to bear against her teammates for one simple reason, speed. Lee and Neji were both insanely fast, easily closing in on Jonin levels, while she was Chunin level at best. That meant the two could close the distance between them faster than she could move to keep it open. Even worse, a lot of the shinobi she interacted with regarded shurikenjutsu as a distraction, or a way to kill those who weren't versed in the use of chakra, like bandits and low-level samurai. That it was her forte made people look down on her. But Naruto didn't. He respected her and liked her. It was flattering, if she were being honest. Yes, he was only an academy student, but he had an arsenal of ninjutsu that most chunin would envy and was a chakra powerhouse. Just being nearby when he was using jutsu made the hair on the back of her neck stand on end simply because of the sheer amount of chakra she could feel pouring out of him. He had been completely unafraid when those Nuke-Nin scumbags had attacked them and had even taken a life during the whole mess. He had borne it like a champ, which had made her admire him a bit. She certainly hadn't adjusted well to her first kill. It had been a bandit operating out of a forest on the coast of Hi-no-Kuni. She had thrown a brace of kunai and pierced through his right eye and heart at the same time. He had dropped head with almost no sound and his sightless eyes had bored into her own. She had snapped out of it, forcing the urge to vomit down until after the mission was complete. I would suggest that you take it slow, Tenten. Kanae said gently, drawing the kunoichi from her thoughts. You're both still very young, so just try to be friends with him, although that is likely already the case. Just see how things pan out with Naruto-kun. He is a boy though, so you might have to spell things out for him if you decide that you want to take things further with him. Those words made the blush on her oh so young, oh so sweet daughter's cheeks redouble in strength. Okawa-san. The next day. Naruto's classroom, Konohagakure Ninja Academy. The blonde boy who went by the name of Naruto was lost in thought as he contemplated a multitude of things. The least of which was the grapefruit-sized rapidly beating pink heart next to the name of one Hyuga Hinata. This, his frantic research told him, indicated that the person who bore it was madly in love with him. He had pulled up her status page using his observed skill and was stunned at what it showed. Name, Hyuga Hinata. Class, Hyuga Taijutsu Generalist. Level, 1-5 next level, 00.00%, level cap, class up for further level progression. Main title, Academy Student plus 25% XP to LV10. Subtitle, Shy Maiden plus 25% embarrassment when around non-related males. Age, 12. HP, 4500 4500. CP, 5500 5500. STR, 30. Santa, 32. Dex, 60. Int, 55. Wis, 58. Luck, 33. Special status, Modest Byakugan plus 2 Dex, plus 1 Int, Wis every level Hyuga Clan Heiress plus 25% XP to all Juken Jutsu. Perks, Chakra Control Adept. Kind-hearted. Determined. Flaws, shy. Downtrodden. Dislikes violence. Hyuga Hinata is the clan heiress of the Hyuga clan, one of the oldest and most respected clans in the elemental nations. In her short life, she has come close to being kidnapped, lost her mother during the birth of her younger sister Hanabi and been blamed by her cousin Neji for the sacrifice of his father after her near kidnapping. Looked down upon by most of her family, her confidence crushed and downtrodden, this shy girl takes confidence from watching the one she loves stand strong despite the burdens upon him. The description of her life up until this moment was an education. She lost her mother, was almost kidnapped and some jerk blamed her for that. Naruto remembered that Tenten's other teammate was this Neji character. Maybe once he sorted out the verbal slip-up he had stumbled over with her yesterday, he could ask her what this Neji guy was like. He did his best not to think about the whole love thing. It made him feel weird. Another thing he had been thinking about was Training Ground 13. Thanks to those spandex-clad morons, it had gotten reset and the difficulty of each sub-area within it had gotten jacked up. Not only that, he had to go out and cleanse each sub-area for an entire week to get them out of oversaturation mode. This meant that he had less time for everything else he had to do, including his daily quests, which was irritating. One quest he had received this morning had been to simply attend the academy, while another was to score above 50% in all classwork while at the academy. The rewards were simply small amounts of Ryo and Express. A drop in both buckets as far as he was concerned, but he did them. A chance at a rare piece of equipment or a jutsu scroll wasn't anything to laugh at. To be blunt, he was going to be busy as hell over the next 3 weeks, at least. It sucked, but what could he do? Blow off his training? Hell no. All right now. Uruka-sensei was saying, today, we will be talking about ninjutsu, starting with the Academy 3. Every ninja academy in existence worth the name teaches those 3. Less common are the so-called, traveling 10, jutsu. These are all E-rank jutsu that were commonly used during the Warring Clans period, but advances in technology have rendered over 3/4 of them obsolete. It is still highly recommended for ninja to learn them if possible, as times have also proved that technology can fail. The scarred Chunin turned and started writing on the board, placing the title of the jutsu at the top. Now, who can name one of the traveling 10 for me? As expected, Sakura's hand shot up. Aside from her, only Choji and Shino raised their hands. Yes, Sakura-chan, Kaden, Habana fire style, spark. The pinkett said with a small smile. It was used to light kindling for campfires. Correct. Uruka nodded. It is a weak enough jutsu that even those without a fire affinity could easily learn it. Out of all of the 10, Habana is the most commonly known one due to the utility of it. Anyone else? Sweeten. Roki water style, filtrate. Choji offered. It cleans water of impurities, but only a bowlful at a time. Correct. The scarred Chunin nodded. Roki was used before we developed filtration seals for water canteens, but I would advise you to learn it regardless. Shino. Doden. Anna earth style, hole. The Aburame air stated softly. It is used to create a foot square hole in the ground commonly used as a fire pit for a campfire. Again, correct. Uruka wrote the 3 jutsu mentioned on the board. Ana was and is used for semi-permanent camps while on border patrol missions, where a simple circle of stones is less desired. Anyone else? There were no others. Okay, 3 out of 10. The Chunin side. The other 7 are Raiden, Seidenki lightning style, static charge which was used to kill blood-sucking insects before the advent of insect repellents, many of which we can thank our own Aburame clan for, Futon. Soyoke's wind style. Gentle breeze which is used to push a small amount of wind into an area, providing a through draft in a building, before the advent of air conditioning, Futon. Shosha wind style. Deodorize which erases weak to moderate sense from all but scenting abilities on the level of the Inuzuka clan or their ninkin. Kaden. Kisu fire style. Extinguish which is used to eliminate any heat or sparks from a campfire once you want it to go out completely. Doden. Yumaru earth style. Fill in which closes up holes such as the type made by Ana. Sweden. Ketsuro water style. Condensation which draws water from the air to a specific location within a meter of the user, useful for if you aren't near a river or at sea. And finally, Doden. Wana earth style. Snare which creates a small pit with a thin covering of earth over the top of it, used as either a way of capturing small animals for food or as a defense for around a campsite, at least against those enemies who are unskilled in the use of chakra. Naruto copied down the details of the traveling 10 and wondered why he hadn't heard of them before now. He actually put his hand up and asked that. A good question, Naruto. Uruka nodded. As the 10 aren't combat-oriented like the 3 are, they get considerably less fame and are thus ignored by most stories and fables. Any veteran ninja will tell you, however, that the 10 are just as important as the 3. After that, Mizuki passed out a scroll to each student that had the traveling 10 jutsu in it. Noticing a slight knowing sneer on the blue-haired teacher's face, Naruto used observe on the scroll. Doctored traveling 10 jutsu scroll. A heavily altered version of the traveling 10 jutsu scroll that has key text portions and diagrams removed from the 10 jutsu it contains. They will either not work at all or blow up in the user's face. A weary sigh left Naruto as he shook his head at Mizuki's antics. The blue-haired Chunin sensei had sabotaged his taijutsu, now he was trying to sabotage his ninjutsu. Lovely, just freaking peachy. As if the blonde orphan didn't already have enough to do as it was, now he had to deal with this. End of the week. Sub-Area 1, Training Ground 13. Naruto dove under the slavering maw of a ravening rabid red squirrel, and sliced up with Tsubaki, gutting the beast in mid-flight. The yell of pain from the squirrel was almost enough to shatter his eardrums. You have inflicted a gutting wound on a ravening rabid red squirrel. It is fatal. Time until death, 10:59. Even as the chakra mutant landed on the ground, actually crashing would be a better word for it, Naruto was already moving in for the kill. Bleeding to death was not a pleasant way to go, at least according to Uruka-sensei, so mercy strokes were encouraged in these kinds of situations. You have slain ravening rabid red squirrel x10. You earn 3000 express. You have slain gnashing nasty gray squirrel x5. You earn 2250 express. Wiping his blades on the fur of the nearest dead mutant, Naruto sheathed Tsubaki and Sumair at his back and hit the loot all button. He got a bunch of squirrel fur and bones, with some ryo and even another jutsu scroll. What's this? Ninpo, Kitsunarisu no Binsho, ninja art, nimbleness of the fox squirrel. He muttered before actually opening it and scanning the description. It was a jutsu that used the user's chakra to boost the user's dexterity while active. Not only that, once it got to higher levels, there was a chance to develop more techniques based on the abilities of a squirrel. The more dex that he had, the higher the chance of him hitting things with shurikenjutsu was, as well as granting a bonus to all of his skills that used dex to determine their effects. Evasion would get a bonus at a higher level, for example. And, with the amount of chakra that he had available, he didn't see why he couldn't keep the jutsu active 24/7. At least while he was awake, anyway. You have acquired the Ninpo, Kitsunarisu no Binsho Jutsu scroll. Do you wish to learn this? Y.N. Hitting Y. With eagerness, Naruto saw the blue light of the jutsu scroll divide in two, with half going into his inventory and the other half entering him. Congratulations. You have learned Ninpo, Kitsunarisu no Binsho. Ninpo, Kitsunarisu no Binsho active LV1, 000. Ninja art. Nimbleness of the fox squirrel was developed by a small clan who entered Konoha a decade after Senju Hashirama's famous battle with Uchiha Madara. They were the Kimono clan, a group of non-blood related ninja who had banded together due to a shared interest in developing jutsu similar to the Inuzuka's Giju Ninpo, Shikyaku no Jutsu, allowing them to mimic the actions and traits of animals, without the feral instincts and appearance of the dog clan. They mysteriously vanished after the Second Great Shinobi War, leaving nothing behind except their empty clan compound. This jutsu allows one to mimic the agility and nimbleness of a fox squirrel, a breed known for their agility, to increase the amount in the dex stat. Costs 15 CP minute. Grants a dex bonus of +5. It seemed a bit lacking, but then again it was only at Level 1, which was the equivalent of an E or D ranked jutsu. You couldn't expect that much. Hey, this would be good for someone who uses their dex stat a lot, like Tenten. Naruto realized with a grin. I'll give her the copy as an apology for calling her Ten-chan, without permission. Go me. Planned safely in his mind, Naruto looked around. That had been the third group of squirrels he had defeated today, but it was the largest by far. If he was a betting man, he'd bet on the area boss showing up soon. In a flash of movement, Naruto was suddenly standing in a very familiar clearing, where the husk of a split tree stood. This was where he had faced the berserk fox squirrel the first time. Knowing what was about to happen, Naruto drew Tsubaki and Sumair and activated the chakra nagashi, futon, jutsu through them. A blue glow surrounded his blades and he could almost hear the shriek of the wind as it was formed into invisible blades along the edge of his tanto. He also activated his new Ninpo, Kitsunarisu no Binsho. You never knew when you'd need a bit of extra speed and it wasn't like he didn't have the chakra for it. As the last time, a tree erupted from the ground, with a giant squirrel perched atop the topmost branches. Unlike last time, the tree itself was warped and evil looking. Then Naruto took a good look at the area boss. LV-19 Bloody Berserk Fox Squirrel. Shadow of the Fox. Oh, fuck. Naruto gulped. 4 levels above him and it actually had a title now, as opposed to how it had been when it had been level 7. This did not bode well. Not only that, it looked even more buff than last time, which was saying something. The version that Neko-san had ever so casually beheaded had been more ripped than a professional bodybuilder. With a bestial snarl that sounded as if it came from a far larger beast, the superpowered chakra mutant leapt at Naruto with speed that exceeded his expectations. Fast. He dodged to the side and lashed out with his twin tanto in a scissor motion, the invisible blades biting deep into the beast's flesh. Seemingly able to completely ignore the chakra-infused blades in its side, the squirrel lashed out with one talon-bearing paw, forcing Naruto back again. For a few minutes, Naruto struggled with the bloody berserk fox squirrel making full use of his evasion skill and counter-attacking when he could, but the chakra mutant was just too fast. The blonde boy leapt over one scything talon to land on the back of the squirrel and proceeded to stab the fuck out of it with first one, then both of his tanto multiple times, making the area boss shriek with rage and pain. Whump. Naruto felt something hit the side of his body and then a brief sensation of weightlessness before tumbling side over side across the ground. Damn it, he'd forgotten about the damn tail. You were struck by the tail of the bloody berserk fox squirrel. You lose 100 HP. Status defense down, inflicted for 120 seconds. Okay, seriously. What the fuck? Naruto gasped as he flipped to his feet. Taking advantage of the distance between him and the boss, he sheathed his blades and ran through 2 series of hand signs in a row. Doden. Iwa Bunshin no Jutsu. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Erupting from the ground at his command, 20 rock clones shot towards the surprised boss monster, with the 8 shadow clones starting a barrage of Gansetsuken, Dongan and Senfukyu that rained down on the oversized monster. Naruto noticed that his rock clones were using Chakra Nagashi, Doden, in order to further increase the strength of their rock tanto blades and Gansetsuken strikes. He hadn't realized that you could use the Doden variant of the Chakra Nagashi jutsu through a construct like the Gansetsuken. You learn something new every day. Shaking his head and pulling his mind out of that line of thought, the blonde boy drew his tanto again and joined in with his rock clones to attack the bloody berserk fox squirrel up close and personal. It wasn't easy due to the speed and surprising agility of the beast, but the rock clones and Naruto managed somehow, especially with the rear line fire support of the shadow clones. The steel-hard hide of the squirrel was literally covered in cuts, some deep enough to pierce through to the other side at thin enough points, but the damn monster just refused to keel over and die. How stubborn was this bastard? Craters ripped open in its flesh from the Senfukyu, limbs pierced through with Gansetsuken, and several close calls with the Dongan. The sheer tenacity of an area boss was not to be underestimated. Boss, look! One shadow clone yelled when the red chakra of the Kyuubi enveloped the bloody berserk fox squirrel. Just as expected, it must be on its last legs to use its trump card. Naruto quickly dropped back out of close combat range to summon more Iwa Bunshin. The ones already out had to be running low on chakra and they would be crunched in a second once the stronger and faster chakra mutant got its claws into them. Your clones take damage from the corrosive shroud of the beast. The blonde boy was suddenly very glad that he had retreated. That hadn't happened last time. He could even see the red chakra eating into the bodies of the clones, damaging them every time they went within a foot of the hulking monstrosity. Swiftly ordering only the mostly untouched rock clones to remain in close combat range, Naruto had the others pull back and add to the ninjutsu barrage, pelting the bloody berserk fox squirrel with Gansetsuken and Dongan, as well as kunai and shuriken made from rock that had been created with them. Such was the sheer volume of missiles being hurled at it, the area boss was actually forced back. The damage wasn't all that much now though, as the chakra shroud, in addition to boosting its physical stats and damaging anything nearby, also seemed to be acting as some kind of chakra-based armor. The Dongan got through it easily, as there was too much mass for it to corrode away quickly enough, and Gansetsuken were still hurting it, though less than before, but the shuriken and kunai made of rock were now proving to be as useful as a chocolate kettle. Finally, the squirrel leapt away from the clones and opened its mouth. Bits of dark red and blue chakra gathered into an almost colorless ball the size of a grapefruit in front of it, and every danger sense that Naruto possessed went off, shrieking at him to not get hit by that thing at all costs. Leaping away from his clones, the blonde boy barely managed to throw himself behind a nearby tree when the bloody berserk fox squirrel fired the ball of chakra. It plowed through his clones like a scythe through a field of corn, smashing the rock clones into pebbles and dispersing the shadow clones into chakra smoke. When it sped past the tree that Naruto was hiding behind, the density of the chakra ball made him very much unnerved. If that had hit me, I'd be dead. Naruto watched horrified fascination as the ball of condensed chakra slammed through several trees before blowing up like a ball of explosive notes on steroids. He had to flip himself around the tree to avoid the shockwave of the blast, as well as several bits of wood that may as well have been crude kunai from the speed they went at. He heard several of them thunk into the wood and stay there. He didn't need to be as smart as Sakura-chan to know they would have made holes the size of an Akamichi's finger in him had he not moved. Boss fired chakra bullet. Boss now suffers from stun. A savage grin crossed Naruto's face. Payback time. He charged forwards, drawing his tanto as he did, and went head to head with the dazed beast. He cut, slashed, stabbed and impaled the damn monster in a somewhat frenzied rush. His last 2 strikes took out an eye with Sumair and sliced open its jugular vein with Tsubaki respectively. With a choked sound, the bloody berserk fox squirrel collapsed to the ground, twitching for a few moments before they faded and the body stilled. Congratulations. You slew the bloody berserk fox squirrel. You earned 3,500 express. Congratulations, you have leveled up. LV15 LV16. You have 5 attribute points to spend. Short Blades Mastery has leveled up. LV3 LV4. Evasion has leveled up. LV2 LV3. Futon, Senfukyu no Jutsu has leveled up. LV3 LV4. Doten, Dongan no Jutsu has leveled up. LV4 LV5. Doten, Gansetsuken no Jutsu has leveled up. LV7 LV8. Detect Bloodlust has leveled up. LV10 LV11. As a result of repeated actions, you have gained the Backstab skill. Backstab passive LV1, 000. As a ninja, you do not charge in headfirst, yelling a battle cry and fighting honorably like a samurai. No. You are a shadow warrior, who uses stealth, guile and trickery to defeat your foes. At least you're supposed to be, anyway. This skill rewards that by granting you increased damage to your strikes as long as your target is unaware of your presence. Take a hint. All attacks made while your target is unaware of your presence have all damage boosted by +10. All attacks made while using stealth skills to mask your presence from your target are granted an additional damage boost of +5 and an additional +5% chance to crit. As a result of a specific action, you have created the skill Self-Taught Nito Ryu Tanto Kenjutsu, Hasamigiri. Self-Taught Nito Ryu Tanto Kenjutsu, Hasamigiri active LV1, 000. Created by Uzumaki Naruto in a fight against a vastly superior opponent, the scissor cut technique cuts the enemy with both blades overlapping like scissors an instant before impact, doubling the damage they deal. Costs 40 CP to use. When used, the strike multiplies the damage dealt by 2 should the blows land. Grants a +5 chance to inflict the bleeding status effect on the target, as well as a +5 chance to crit. Phew, Naruto whistled. That was a couple of pretty good skills he'd developed. Although he had to wonder about the way that first description was written. It sounded like someone was dissing him. He looked up as a crimson red light emerged from the corpse of the squirrel and shot at him. He had no chance to do more than blink in shock before the red chakra slammed into him. You have absorbed the remaining chakra of the Kyubi no Kitsune from the bloody berserk fox squirrel. You permanently gain +200 CP. The boy had been staggered by the impact, but his eyes widened as he read the notice. What the? I thought that stuff was corrosive. Why aren't I dead and why did I absorb it in the first place? Much to his surprise, another pop-up appeared. Help feature, active. Biju chakra is attracted to stronger reservoirs of similar Biju chakra unless contained within a specially sealed vessel or a living being. That you absorb the chakra of the nine-tailed fox logically means you have said tailed beast sealed within you. Have a nice day. Naruto stared blankly at the screen with a deadpan expression on his face. Seriously. What the fuck? Chapter 17. Revelation of Truth. The next day. Naruto's apartment. How the heck did I get back here? Naruto muttered aloud as he started looking around. He was lying on his bed with his usual green sleeping cap on his head and pajamas on. It was an honest question. The last thing he remembered from yesterday was beating that beefed-up fox squirrel and getting that weird-ass message. Naruto had no recall of ever leaving TG-13 let alone getting home, eating, bathing, getting changed and going to bed. Yet it was plainly obvious that he had done all of the above. He grimaced as he remembered the last thing he could recall, being told he had the goddamn nine-tailed fox sealed up inside him by his little gamer system. Had he wandered back in such a daze that he couldn't even remember doing it? It certainly seemed so. As he went about his morning routine, Naruto considered what to do. He had the Kyubi inside him. That explained why people, the older generation at least, seemed to hate him so much for no reason, even before he started his pranks. Well, the vast majority had anyway. He was man enough to admit that his pranks probably hadn't helped any in that department. That, of course, led the young blonde to wondering just who he should be questioning about this, since it was plainly obvious he needed more information if he ever wanted any peace of mind. His first instinct was Iruka-sensei, but he was only a chunin. There were probably details about it, details Naruto had to know, that the academy teacher wasn't aware of. Iruka was near the top of a very small list of people that Naruto trusted while also being likely to know about his status as the, what had that message called it? Ah yes, Jinchuriki, of the Kyubi. The sad thing was, there were only about a dozen people that satisfied both categories and sadly, only Iruka and one other were trusted enough that Naruto would accept their words at face value. Well, I guess it's about time I go and talk to Gigi again. He mused aloud. This was not going to be a pleasant conversation, Naruto was already sure of it. Still, he needed to know why. Why did he have the Kyubi sealed within him? The only person who could have done it was the legendary Yondaime Hokage, but why didn't history, at least the history books he had read in class, say anything about the fox being sealed? Question after question and a very large whack of hurt betrayal started to run through his mind before Naruto rather firmly tamped down on them, Gamer's mind activating and helping him digest that before his emotions started to run rampant. Gigi was the Hokage, first and foremost. He had to have reasons for what he did and Naruto sincerely hoped that the old man, who had acted as something like a surrogate grandfather for as far back as he could remember, would be willing to discuss them with him. Quest alert. Grab the fox by its tails. You have discovered that you carry the great nine-tailed fox within you, sealed there by the Yondaime Hokage in all likelihood at the cost of his life on your birthday. The best person to ask is your surrogate grandfather, the Hokage. Confront him and get the truth. Quest rewards, +2500 XP, +5000 Ryo, special status changes, plus. Reputation with Sarutobi Hiruzen. Quest failure, more quest alerts until you do this. Except, YN. Another quest with no refusal allowed. Naruto had to shake his head as he hit the, Y, button to make it go away. He could almost swear there was someone pulling this crap for shits and giggles. If there was, the blonde orphan swore he'd find them eventually before giving them a sincere and thorough beating and maybe treat them to a first-hand demonstration of all the jutsu he'd been collecting. As the target. Dummy. Later. Hokage's office, Hokage Tower. A long life as an active duty shinobi had allowed Sarutobi Hiruzen to develop a number of talents, one of which was a finely tuned sense for when trouble was afoot. It had served him well, both as an active shinobi and as a desk-bound Hokage, and had saved his life several times before, so he'd learned to trust it wholeheartedly. Thus, since that same sense had been ringing constantly since he'd woken up this morning, he was naturally more than a little tense. Then his surrogate grandson walked through the door to his office, his face seemingly carved out of stone into a severe expression, and those same internal alarms started blaring at a condition red level. The last time they'd done that was when he last forgot his and Bawako's anniversary. He'd been on the couch for a month for that. Before he could say anything, Naruto closed the door firmly behind him and began forming signs with his hands. Hiruzen instantly recognized the Konoha field sign language, though he was half surprised the boy already had it down so clearly. Top secret information. Secure room. The internal alarms raised another level, going to code black. Naruto had never been one to hold anything back when it came to speaking with him about anything. For him to go this far, what could it be he wanted to talk about? Deciding that this required looking into, the Hokage simply gave the boy a single nod before tapping a small panel on the side of his desk. This caused the hidden latch to switch and the panel to flip, revealing a black square seemingly burned into the wood. Channeling chakra into the square, which was actually a disguised sealing array, he felt, rather than saw, the network of intricate and powerful seals spring to life around the room. The security system had originally been emplaced by the Nadaime Hokage at his brother's request, with no small help from Lady Mito. Jiraiya and the Yondaime had both worked to update and streamline the various arrays to keep up with any new developments in the sealing arts as well as a form of training for themselves. He remembered that Minato had made planning and designing a complete overhaul of the system a pet project after he became the Hokage. The room is now secure, Naruto-kun, he said in concern as he eyed his favorite orphan worriedly. What is the matter? Gigi, I was in training ground 13 yesterday, trying to cull the first sub-area down to a reasonable number, Naruto started hesitantly. At Sarutobi's encouraging nod, he continued. I'd just killed my last mutated squirrel when this super mutant leapt out of the woodwork and tried to bite my head off. I'd seen one before, when Nako-san and the others saved me from the Spandex Brigade's stupidity. Nako-san made it look so easy I thought I could fight it, so I did. I managed to wear it down to where it was barely holding on, then it started leaking this evil chakra from all over its body and it formed some kind of chakra cloak around itself. The stuff was so potent that I could frickin' see it. It was this bright red and it practically made my eyes burn just by looking at it. It looked like it was melting through my rock clones just by standing near them. Hiruzen, who'd been listening intently so far, practically bit through the end of his pipe as his body stiffened in shock, and he could feel the three Anbu guard hiding in the room doing the same. Chakra often took on properties based on how it was used and who was using it. Depraved and evil men, those who gloried in the darker aspects of humanity, sometimes gave off chakra that felt unpleasant to normal people if they were powerful enough. However, the only chakra Hiruzen had ever heard of that had the same kind of potency that Naruto had just described was that of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. The red color simply adds further confirmation. There's no doubt that the creature Naruto had encountered possessed some of the Kyuubi's chakra. Sarutobi mind-whirled at lightning speeds as he tried to make sense of what he was hearing. How? A chakra mutant, of course. The fox was radiating chakra at an unimaginable scale when it attacked 12 years ago. There were pockets of residual chakra covering the entire village. I had several dedicated sealing squads searching for months after the day of the Kyuubi in hopes of finding and clearing it out before it could lead to something like this. Some must have nestled deep within the training grounds. The chakra already rampant there would have concealed it if it was small enough. Then it would have simply lain dormant there, festering and growing until it found a strong enough host to infect. I see. The Hokage said aloud, already making plans to have an Anbu squad burn training ground 13 to the ground if they had to in order to find and neutralize the beast before it could grow into something truly dangerous. And how did you escape from it? I didn't. Naruto stated simply. I had my rock and shadow clone swarm the thing until we finally managed to kill it. Hearing this, Sarutobi couldn't help but let out a small breath of relief. Even if Nako had easily managed to kill a similar creature, something he was going to be sure she was properly rewarded for, it was quite something else for an academy student to kill something that possessed the chakra of one of the 9 Biju. As a chakra mutation, it had likely possessed an instinctive connection to the corrosive chakra that no human, even a true Jinchuriki, could ever possess. On the other hand, it had also been merely an animal, a creature incapable of planning or truly strategizing, being locked only in the present. Any animalistic cunning the beast had possessed before would likely have been completely subsumed by the raging malevolence that seemed to infuse the Kyuubi's chakra, reducing it to rabid frenzy. Of course, that still meant that Naruto had been able to take down a frothing berserker infused with a sliver of power from one of the 9 Biju. That was something he'd be impressed by from a seasoned genin, let alone an academy student. That was well done, Naruto-kun. He praised warmly. Yeah, that isn't the end of it. Naruto added nervously, reaching up to scratch at the back of his head. A tic he'd inherited from his mother, Hiruzen noted, whenever she was nervous or embarrassed. I stayed back after I noticed how it was melting through my rock clones, but when the squirrel died, that same chakra leapt from it to me and just seemed to flow into me. Eyes widening, Sarutobi locked eyes with his surrogate grandson as the boy looked at him imploringly. Gigi, what the heck am I? That chakra wasn't human. Closing his eyes painfully, Sarutobi brought a hand up to cover his eyes as he leaned back in his chair. There was no way out of this. He had to tell Naruto the truth. He briefly contemplated lying, but quickly shook the idea off. While he was certain he'd come up with something believable that would placate the boy, he also knew that the consequences of such a lie, when Naruto eventually learned the truth of his condition, could be disastrous. Also, ever since Naruto had started to develop his unusual abilities, he had also started to display a level of shrewdness that few would have expected from him before. It would make creating a suitable falsehood and maintaining it for any extended period far more difficult. No, he had always intended to tell the boy the truth after he graduated from the academy, lying now would only delay an inevitable discussion and make it that much more painful. I was hoping that I would be able to postpone this talk until you officially became a shinobi, Naruto-kun. Hiruzen spoke softly, his voice carrying a feeling of tired resignation. Words once spoken cannot be taken back and the truth can be a terrible burden to bear. Are you prepared for what I am about to tell you, even so? Yes. Naruto nodded firmly. Sarutobi opened his eyes and gazed somberly at him for a moment. Very well. Naruto's perspective. Unfortunately, there are only so many secrets I can reveal to you at this time. His Gigi started out tiredly. What do you mean? Naruto cocked his head to the side in confusion. The part that you asked about is an S-rank secret. The Hokage explained as he sat forward slightly. The only reason that I am able to disclose this information to you is because it pertains directly to your body and life, and even then I am skirting the edge since you have not officially joined the shinobi rosters yet. There are, however, SS and SSS rank secrets to do with you that I legally cannot reveal to you until you reach the rank of Jonin, or Special Jonin at the very least. It is not a matter of whether I want or not but that I cannot. That stopped Naruto's incipient protest cold before he could finish thinking about it. S-class secrets were the kind couriers burned before letting an enemy get their hands on them. SS-class secrets were the kind that battlefields worth of ninja were sacrificed without hesitation to protect. SSS-class secrets were the kind that started or stopped wars based on who knew them. That his Gigi was even telling him about the existence of any secrets of that rank to do with him was an immense sign of trust on his surrogate grandfather's part. One that made Naruto feel all warm and fuzzy inside about his Gigi. I understand. The blonde orphan nodded seriously. After peering at him for a moment, Sarutobi nodded and continued. Now then, to start off with, I am certain you have guessed the source of this chakra. Am I correct? Naruto looked sheepish. Kinda. It's the chakra of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, isn't it? Correct. The old man nodded again. Your story starts 12 years ago, on your day of birth, which was also the day that the Kyuubi attacked Konoha. In the history books, the ones in Konoha for the younger generation anyway, it is claimed that the Yondaime sacrificed his life in order to use a kinjutsu that managed to kill the beast. This is plainly a lie. Why couldn't he kill it? Naruto asked curiously. The Kyuubi is not a creature of flesh and blood, Naruto-kun. It is an entity formed purely of chakra given thought and condensed to a point that it take on solid form. The Hokage explained. It is possible to disperse their bodies, though it is by no means an easy feat and even that does not truly kill them. Their consciousness is linked wholly with their chakra and, given time, that consciousness will draw their chakra back together until it can return to a physical form. It is a process that can take years, or even decades, but eventually they will reform and you are back at square one. But, it only showed up 12 years ago, how do you know all this? Was what Naruto needed to puzzle out. Sarutobi folded his hands in front of him as he answered. There are more chakra entities out there than the Kyuubi, Naruto-kun. The 9 most well-known are called the Biju. The Shidaime Hokage used his Mokuden wood-style Kekkei Genkei to subdue and capture every one of them, bar the 9 tails, and established a sort of power balance between the fledgling villages by gifting the Biju to them. The Biju have tails ranging from 1 tail through to 9 and each take on a different animal. Appearance. They are the 1-tailed tanuki, the 2-tailed monster cat, the 3-tailed giant tortoise, the 4-tailed giant ape, the 5-tailed dolphin horse, the 6-tailed slug, the 7-tailed giant beetle, the 8-tailed giant ox and of course, the 9-tailed fox. Are they all as powerful as everyone says the fox is? Naruto asked. Generally, the Biju are rated based on the number of tails they possess. The larger the number of tails, the stronger the beast. Still, it would be like comparing a 10-ton elephant to an 11-ton elephant. Both are still capable of squishing a man like a bug. More than that, each possess their own unique abilities that makes fighting them on their own grounds suicidal for anyone, even cage-level shinobi. Hiruzen answered. The one tail, for example, has a long held the ability to fuse its chakra body with sand and resided in caves on Kuni's vast desert before Shidaime-sama captured it. In that desolate expanse of sand, the one tail is far more powerful than it would be elsewhere, and proved a serious obstacle for Shidaime-sama to capture. I was still just a child at the time, but I was taken along to witness the battle. I knew then, just as I know now, that had it been anyone else, even the Nidaime, they would not have emerged victorious against the one tail. The sheer awe in the old man's voice when he spoke of that battle made Naruto gulp. He couldn't begin to comprehend the scale of the battle his Gigi had witnessed. After everything that the Sandaime had seen and done in his life, for him to still consider that battle one of the greatest he had ever seen was amazing. After pausing for a moment to let what he had said so far sink in, the Hokage continued in a somber voice. Using Fuinjutsu, it is possible to seal one of the Biju inside of a person, allowing them to draw upon the chakra of the sealed beast. A human to whom this had been done to is known as a Jinchuriki, literally meaning, the power of human sacrifice, in an old tongue. That, Naruto-kun, is what you are, the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. As it is impossible to slay a Biju permanently, sealing it away was the only choice left to the Yondaime. Naruto swallowed as he tried to sort through everything he'd just learned. After a moment, he had to ask another question. But, why me? Why seal it into me? Sarutobi's eyes softened. Not just anyone can become a Jinchuriki, Naruto-kun. It is very, very difficult to find someone to seal a tailed beast into. I do not know if you are aware of this, but you are one of the last living members of the Uzumaki clan. All members of your clan possess a unique physiology that makes you near-perfect hosts for a Biju's powerful chakra. Aside from that, the reason you in particular were chosen is rather simple. Normally sealing one of the biju takes a great deal of time, preparation, and an immense amount of chakra. The Yondaime had very little of all three by the time he was able to start the sealing process. While the kinjutsu the Yondaime used took care of most of the time restraints and some of the chakra, at the cost of his own life, there was still much more that was needed. The main reason for the extensive preparation and chakra cost is to reinforce the chakra coils of the prospective host, otherwise the biju's potent chakra would shatter them, killing the host before the process is finished and merely dispersing the beast's chakra. The chakra coils of a newborn baby, however, are undeveloped and thus far more malleable. As you were the only newborn in the village, you were the only possible candidate. The only one the Yondaime could trust to seal the fox in and save the village. Those were some very good reasons. What about my parents? Naruto asked, hoping to find something about them. They both fell to the attacks of the Kyuubi. Sarutobi said gently. But I know that they believed in you just as much as the Yondaime did, Naruto-kun. Just as much as I believe in you. Gigi. Naruto fought back the tears. Is this why everyone's so mean to me? Because of the fox. The old Hokage slumped tiredly back into his seat. The Yondaime's last wish was that you would be known as a hero, Naruto-kun. That by having the fox sealed within you, you were acting as the shield of this village day by day. Unfortunately, the Yondaime believed in the villagers. Too much so, I am sad to say. All of the deaths, all of the destruction, you were seized upon as a scapegoat, Naruto-kun. Some believed you to be merely the reincarnation of the fox itself. He scoffed. Idiocy. Others thought it had possessed you, which is equally ridiculous. Why? When constructing a seal to contain a biju within a human, one of the first things done if you aren't stupid is to create a barrier between the souls and minds of the biju and Jinchuriki, to prevent any kind of contamination or possession from happening. The Sandaime explained. Jiraiya of the Sannin and I have checked your seal very, very thoroughly, and not only is it locked tight, the mental safeguards are well beyond what you would expect for even a Jinchuriki's seal. It would be more likely for you to spontaneously develop a Kekkei Genkai than for the fox to possess you. This made Naruto sweat drop for a moment as you could, if you tilted your head and squinted somewhat, call it the gamer, a bloodline ability of sorts, although he had no clue if it was hereditary or not. Anyway, as the villagers, and other factors, were becoming ardent regarding you, I made an S-class law, forbidding anyone from telling anyone about your status as the Kyuubi Jinchuriki who did not already know. Sarutobi sighed. I had hoped that by doing so, you could grow up as normally as possible. Sadly, it seems that the villagers merely made their children inherit their dislike of you, and the adults harass you. For not knowing of this for all this time, I can only apologize profoundly, Naruto-kun. With that, the Hokage bowed his head in remorse towards Naruto, who could only stare in wide-eyed shock. Gigi, you tried. Naruto said once he managed to recover his equilibrium. It isn't your fault that the villagers violated Yondaime-sama's wishes. It's their fault. So please stop bowing, it's weird to see you do that. Chuckling at that, Sarutobi straightened up. Thank you for your understanding. Still, I am sorry for what you have endured until now. It isn't warranted, nor is it fair. I give you my word that any further interference from the civilian villagers will be curtailed severely, if not outright suppressed. The steely look of determination in the old shinobi's eyes made Naruto actually feel a little sorry for any civilian who was stupid enough to come at him. So, what does being the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi do for me? Naruto asked after a moment. As it has been dwelling within you almost since you were born, your chakra coils are vastly larger than normal. I'd estimate that by now the chakra reserves you can access now are low Jonin level at the very least. Sarutobi said with a nod at the boy's question. Reserves I can access. Naruto tilted his head to one side in confusion. Yes, humans have a lot of chakra, even those without active coils. The professor explained. What we refer to as a person's chakra pool is the amount of chakra, that is the combination of mental and physical energy, which someone can safely draw upon without causing harm to themselves. That is the reserves I was speaking of earlier. If you really push yourself, you can access more chakra, but it would be drawn from the mental and physical energy that sustains your body, which would cause you harm. Severe cases of this are referred to as negative chakra, and almost always result in the person in question retiring as an active shinobi. In your case, however, you likely have so much chakra that you don't have to worry about that unless you were to use multiple S-rank jutsu in quick succession. However, possessing too much chakra without the ability to manipulate it fully is just as dangerous. The sheer amount of chakra within your body could have detrimental effects if you attempt to manipulate it all at once. So your mind and body instinctively places a limit on what you can and cannot use. With practice and work on your chakra control, that limit will slowly but surely rise until you can use all of the chakra that you have without any worries of burning yourself out. Wow, that actually made sense. His chakra points represented the chakra he could safely access without burning himself out, and they rose because he had a greater control over chakra and ability to withstand the pressure of the chakra. Once you have some seasoning as a genin, I'll have Jiraiya-kun come and have another look at your seal and perhaps teach you a method of harnessing the chakra of the Kyuubi. Sarutobi continued. Aside from myself, Jiraiya-kun has the most knowledge about the seal holding the Kyuubi, and he has the additional advantage of being in Fuinjutsu Grand Master, whereas I am a mere intermediate master. I'm gonna be trained by a Sannin. Naruto's eyes nearly bulged out of his head. Even he'd heard of the Great Three Ninja, the Sandaime's own students. Should you pass the graduation exam, yes. The old man had to chuckle at the childlike awe that the boy showed at that revelation. Now, just to give you advance warning, no one is permitted to inform others of your status of as the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi with 3 exceptions. Me, as the one who wrote the law, the sitting Hokage, which just so happens to be me at the moment, and the person whom the law is about, you, in other words, Naruto-kun. I will caution you to be careful who you tell, as it should not be bandied around carelessly. If other villages discovered your identity, they would attempt to kidnap you and extract the Kyuubi to use for their own ends, which would kill you. The orphan gulped. Understood, Gigi. The Hokage nodded approvingly. Now that the Kyuubi business is done, there is something I was hoping to ask you about Naruto-kun. A member of Anbu spotted you using some strange ability to absorb a scroll while in town. Can I ask what it is that you did? Naruto froze. Hell, he had not expected Anbu to be lurking around. Although, now that he knew of his status as the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, it made sense for him to be shadowed outside of his apartment or the academy, especially since the Spandex Brigade incident. The familiar sight of the world going gray and a box popping up in front of him was almost welcome. Critical choice. At this time, you are left with two options, either attempt to bluff the Hokage or come clean about the gamer with him. Your chances of bluffing him are almost non-existent. Be warned that your choice here will affect your relationship with the Hokage. Choice 1. Well Gigi, since you were honest with me. Choice 2. Haha, what are you talking about Gigi? This, Naruto could tell, was an absolutely critical moment for him, as the headline of the box stated. He did not want to damage his relationship with his Gigi, but at the same time, he was leery of revealing his big secret. The blonde boy froze again. Then again, his Gigi had just revealed a big secret of the village to him when he could have simply bluffed it out or put him off until graduation in a couple of months. He had trusted Naruto, so the only right thing to do was to trust him in return. Slowly, Naruto reached out and pressed the first option, restarting time as he looked into his surrogate grandfather's eyes. Well Gigi, since you were honest with me, I should be honest with you Datbeo. He said with a nervous swallow. I woke up a couple of months ago to see something floating above my head. He then went on to give a brief explanation of his gamer power, what he could do with it, how it affected things around him and so on. As he went on, he saw that the Hokage was becoming more and more skeptical, so he pulled a scroll out of his inventory as proof. This made Sarutobi examine his arm and clothes for any kind of seal and he was baffled when he found none. I can't figure it out. There was absolutely no sign of chakra being used there. The old man confessed in mild disbelief. He made a note to look up this Gaia theory in his personal library at some point. He vaguely recalled having heard of it before, but couldn't recall anything other than the name. I wish there was a way to show you everything. Naruto said in frustration. Then he blinked as a screen popped up in front of him. Invite Sarutobi Hiruzen to the party. Oh, how suspiciously convenient. Hitting the correct button, he watched in amusement as his Gigi started at the sight of a box appearing in front of him. He'd been like that in the beginning. Party invitation. Uzumaki Naruto has invited you into his party. Accept. Forming the ram hand sign, Sarutobi attempted a genjutsu dispel using both methods he knew of, but the box remained. With a flip of his wrist, a kunai appeared in the old man's hand and he applied a quick cut to the tip of one of his fingers, not even wincing at the sudden pain, but the box remained. I did the same thing. Naruto confided in him. Either we're both affected by a stupidly powerful genjutsu, or this is for real. Nodding, the Hokage gingerly pressed the key and then his jaw dropped as his own status box appeared. He quickly scanned it and looked at Naruto in disbelief. These are my physical and mental attributes. He asked for confirmation. Yup. Naruto did his best to keep his curiosity under control and not take a peek himself. Asking about or peeking at his Gigi's stat page would be like gathering information for an attack on him. If he wanted to show Naruto, then he would look, but not otherwise. What level does it say you are, Gigi? Level 99. Sarutobi replied after a moment, making Naruto gape at him. I knew you were strong, but. The orphan was amazed at his surrogate grandfather. Here was he at only LV15. The difference between them was insane. I also have several special statuses that mostly involve my physical prowess taking something of a hit due to my advanced age. Sarutobi sighed. They can be mitigated, now that I know what to instruct the med nin to look for and deal with, but sadly one cannot fight age indefinitely. He spent the next few minutes looking over his skills, his perks and his flaws. The wonder in his eyes grew with every clarification he came across that proved Naruto had spoken the truth. Naruto-kun, this is a strange and wonderful power that you have been given. The old man said at last. It would also put a target the size of the Hokage mountain on you if anyone found out about it. I can name several organizations who would love nothing more than to somehow gain control of such a unique ability, never mind the possibility that it might be inheritable by your children. I can lay even odds on people attempting to kidnap you in order to gain the gamer for their village via your progeny. Yikes, Naruto muttered, blanching at the thought. His class had been given the talk just a few months ago and it had taken him ages to not explode into a full body blush at the sight of a girl. Getting the gamer had really helped with that. As such, I am declaring this a SS rank secret, not to be written down and only I can tell others about it. Sarutobi stated. One possibility he did not tell Naruto about was the danger represented by Danzo and his Nei operatives. He could just imagine the old warhawk salivating at the amount of strength that his men could obtain while under the effects of the gamer. No, he was not going to permit that to happen to either his home or his surrogate grandson. Once you graduate, your Jonin sensei will be informed of the gamer's existence, but no one else aside from in a life or death situation. The Hokage continued sternly. I say this as the Sandaime Hokage and order it thus. Am I understood, Naruto-kun? Hi, Hokage-sama. Naruto responded automatically. This was the first time his Gigi had ordered him as the military dictator of the village and boy, was the old man intimidating. You have been affected by Sarutobi Hiruzen's aura of command skill. The two blinked at the pop-up and shook their heads at the range and depth that the gamer seemed to deal in. Naruto checked the skill and discovered it was a skill unlocked when Sarutobi had reached a leadership stat of 50. It made the user's subordinates more likely to follow orders, and faster, as well as being able to enforce obedience on neutral, allied or friendly characters within line of sight with LD of less than the bearer's own. Broken as hell, Naruto muttered. Just so, Sarutobi said bemusedly in agreement. After a moment, the blonde boy looked at the Hokage. Gigi, I can see that having a biju is kind like a weapon, do the ninja see me like that? Swiftly shifting mental gears at the change in subject, Sarutobi sighed. The divide in the ninja forces is pronounced. The civilian-born members generally dislike you due to how they perceive you as the kyuubi, although there are exceptions. The ninja clansmen and clanswomen that join the ninja forces have a better understanding of fuinjutsu and the history of Jinchuriki in their clan's own library, so they are at least neutral to you. The increased knowledge of the basic rules of fuinjutsu is where most of that understanding comes from, as only old and powerful clans, such as the Hyuga, have any records of Jinchuriki outside of the official Konoha records. Why? I would have thought that it was pretty much an open secret since Shadaime-sama handed the biju out like party favors. Naruto pointed out. Suppressing a snort of amusement at the comparison, the Sandaime shook his head. All clans have their specialties, Naruto-kun. Taijutsu, ninjutsu, genjutsu, out of all of them, a specialty in fuinjutsu is rarer than you might think, and most clans rarely extend interest to subjects outside of those specialties. More than that, the policy for the sitting Hokage over the past 100 years since the founding has been to encourage such a disinterest in Jinchuriki. Why, I am not at liberty to say. Naruto filed this under, things that are suspicious in his mind. For making a correct deduction, you gain +1 whiz. Does this happen all the time? Sarutobi asked. More often than I'd like. Naruto grumbled. I could swear that it's mocking me sometimes. He glared at the place in front of him that boxes usually popped up in, almost daring the gamer to comment on that. It evidently chose not to. Did immaterial entities even have survival instincts, he wondered. Anyway, you have a few months left until graduation. Sarutobi continued. Do you know how strong you'll be at that point? Level-wise, I'm hoping to reach level 17. Naruto stated. I can't reach any higher than that because of a level cap, as the gamer calls it. I have to class up from academy student to genin before I can raise my level higher. If or when I reach level 17, I'll probably focus on improving my stats and leveling up my jutsu as much as I can. What can you tell me about jutsu levels? The Hokage asked interestedly. Only what I've observed with my own jutsu. Naruto admitted with a slight shrug. Apparently jutsu, actually all skills in general, seem to have this level cap thing, a point past which they cannot become stronger. The self-made bow, tanto and kodachi styles that I made reached it at level 10. I'd call them about F rank, the kind that even a chakra-active civilian could use. I see, most of my E rank jutsu, except for multiple application jutsu such as the Academy 3, stopped at level 25 to 30, with D rank jutsu stopping at 40, C ranks at 50, B ranks at 75, A ranks at 80 and some of my S rank jutsu still haven't been maxed out and they're over 100. The old Hokage reported as he scanned his own skill sheet again. I also have a lot of these skills that aren't really jutsu, such as that aura of command ability from a moment ago. A lot of them are chakra control skills and the like. Okay, really jealous. Naruto scowled. I only just got basic chakra control a while back, and that was after doing the tree climbing exercise a whole bunch. I'll look over some of the exercises that I've acquired over the years, particularly for those that match your elemental affinities. Sarutobi promised. For your graduation present, you're a futon Doden primary, secondary, correct? Yup. I'm aiming to get Kaden as a tertiary affinity as well if I can swing it. Asuma sensei showed me a couple of kick-ass jutsu that got me really excited about it. Naruto declared with a gleeful expression on his face. This made the old Hokage laugh. Gaining a tertiary chakra nature is a basic requirement for full Jonin rank, Naruto-kun. He chuckled. I admire your tenacity and ambition, but I would recommend only dabbling in Kaden jutsu for now. Focus on solidifying and mastering your natural chakra natures first. It will lead to acquiring your third affinity much faster than otherwise. Got it. The boy nodded determinedly. Well then, I think we've gone over everything. The Sandaime said with a sigh. Once again, do not mention your gamer powers to anybody and be very careful to whom you mention your status as a Jinchuriki, as well as those around them. It is your choice to whom you tell that particular secret to so long as they are from Konoha, but I would advise that, for now, keeping your secret a secret is the best plan. Gotcha. Naruto nodded seriously. After discussing Mizuki's latest sabotage attempt which Sarutobi was not happy about, the two parted, with the old Hokage sighing for what felt like the umpteenth time that day. Whatever this gamer power is, Naruto-kun will use it wisely as a shinobi. Sarutobi thought as he tapped a finger on the desk, his eyes absently darting across his reopened status screen, searching for some form of clue. What concerns me more is the origin of this strange power. It is unlike any form of Kekkei Genkei I have ever heard of, and the fact that it does not seem fueled by chakra is terrifying in its own way. More so, such a power does not simply crop up every day, nor do I for one moment believe that Naruto's selection is, the gamer, is in any way random. Being the gamer is one thing, being the Kyuubi Jinchuriki is another, but to be both at once. He could not help a shudder run across his body. Once Naruto could expand the scopes of his power more freely, Sarutobi had the feeling that the orphan son of the Yondaime and the red-hot habanero would truly surpass those who came before him. Speaking of which, ending the lockdown on his office, the old Hokage snapped his fingers, causing an Anbu member with a dog mask to appear kneeling before his desk. Inform the surveillance teams that they are to step up the level of scrutiny Toji Mizuki is under from level 3 to level 2. He ordered coldly. Level 3 scrutiny from an Anbu team was basic observation of the subject's daily routine, as well as casual background checks of his friends and acquaintances. Level 2 was more invasive and less polite, involving the infiltration of his home and all of his scrolls, secret stashes and the like being searched, as well as thorough background checks on not only his friends and casual acquaintances, but his colleagues, family and even his general neighborhood. If Mizuki proved to be any more suspicious, Sarutobi would escalate things to level 0, bypassing level 1 altogether, and have the man interrogated by Mitarashi Anko and Morino Ibiki. He was already guilty of weakening the strength of the village Jinchuriki, a class of crime in itself. Hatred could make men do reckless, stupid things, but it could also make them become weak-minded as well, leading them to choose options they would not have before they were infected by pervasive hatred. Hi, Hokage-sama. Dog replied and vanished in a puff of chakra smoke. You had better hope that my Anbu do not find anything amiss with you beneath the surface, Mizuki. The Sandame muttered before returning to his paperwork. The Chunin had already been on thin ice for what Iruka-kun had reported back when Naruto had just gained the gamer, but now. One more misstep and the old Hokage would simply make the man disappear. In any terms of value, Naruto's safety and proper development was now worth far more than a single Chunin. With Naruto. Quest complete. Grab the fox by its tails. You have successfully confronted your surrogate grandfather and had the truth, or a large part of it at least, revealed to you. Quest rewards. Plus 2500 XP, plus 5000 Ryo. Special status change to QB Jinchuriki discovered perk perfect Jinchuriki host reputation with Sarutobi Hiruzen maxed out. Hidden quest. Complete. You willingly revealed your status as the gamer to your village leader with only the gentlest of prodding. Hidden quest rewards. Bakuhatsu Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, scroll, Greater Fujin Haori. You have successfully maxed out your reputation with a character for the first time. You gain plus 5000 XP. Wow, was all the boy could say to that. The EXP and Ryo were nice, but the rest was the real treat. The perk perfect Jinchuriki host basically stated exactly what his Jiji had told him, that he could have any of the Biju sealed within him without any negative effects. The QB Jinchuriki special status was the one that added to his chakra so much with every level, and his heart swelled with pride as he saw that he and his Jiji had the maximum possible relationship. The 2 extra rewards for the hidden quest certainly sounded kick-ass too. Another part of the Greater Fujin set was useful, and the explosive shadow clone jutsu would be a good addition to his rapidly growing arsenal of techniques. He'd have to experiment with the jutsu to see exactly how good it was. As the boy set off to his apartment, he had a jaunty step to his walk. Things had gone far better than he would have thought today and he couldn't be happier. You have moved more than half a mile from your party members. Do you wish to disband the party? YN. Will he remember everything I told and showed him? Naruto wondered. Yes. The boy twitched in surprise as his gamer ability actually answered his muttered question. That was weird. Just about as weird as it telling him about the QB in what had to be the most irrelevant written tone that he had ever read. Shaking off the suspicion that something was going on with the gamer, Naruto hit the Y button and dissolved the party. He'd figure out what was up with his power later. For now, he had important business to do. Lunch at Ichiraku's. Later. Underground base, Konoha. Danzo, sitting behind a desk, listening as his agent reported what little he knew about the meeting that had occurred between the weapon and the old monkey. The defeat of his agents a few weeks ago, with one actually dying at the hands of the weapon, was a mixed bag of news for the old warhawk. On one hand, the weapon was now blooded and would find taking a life far easier from here on out. On the other hand though, he was fairly certain that Sarutobi had guessed that he was behind the attack. Plus, losing an agent, even if it wasn't one of his elite operatives, in what should have been a milk run, was not making him any happier. Nee's rosters were small enough already without losing agents on easy missions. The fact that the old fool would likely now be working to further undermine his organization would make replacing his losses and gathering new, raw materials, even more difficult than it had been before. The meeting that had taken place earlier that day between the two people who had irked the Yami no Shinobi for the past 12 years was unusual. Oh, the two met with an irritating frequency, so the meeting in and of itself wasn't unusual, but the fact that Sarutobi had judged whatever it was they were going to talk about to be serious enough to activate Tobirama-sensei's secrecy and privacy seals was worthy of note. Even he couldn't bypass those seals without Sarutobi realizing he had done so. He'd made several attempts at finding a bypass and had some partial successes early on, but when both that fool Jiraiya and the soft-hearted brat Namikaze had gotten involved in updating them, his attempts had become utterly ineffective. Danzo may have loathed Jiraiya for a foolish wastrel and the Yondaime for his pacifistic tendencies, but not even he could deny their skills with art of Fuinjutsu far surpassed his own. Return to your post. The crippled man instructed the agent once he finished his report. Attempt to discover any paperwork that might give a hint as to the subject of their conversation. Hi, Danzo-sama. The man vanished as he spoke. Danzo leaned back in his seat and pondered the situation. He daren't risk riling up his old rival now that his most overt card had been played, at least not until the weapon became a genin and went out on a C-rank mission. At that point, he could have him tested by hired nuke nin using actual nuke nin this time to see if the death of his agent had been a sign of the weapon's strength or the influence of the Higurashi girl. She had been an unforeseen wrench in his plans, he had to admit. Monitoring a fairly new genin in her normal family, blacksmithing expertise and former shinobi status aside, was not something he would have thought he would have to do. Evidently he should have kept a closer eye on them, as her presence had thrown his agents off enough to not stick to their script. The reports of her hurling what amounted to an entire armory's worth of weaponry as a result of what one had said had taken him a moment to believe. It was at times like this that the Warhawk could see why Sarutobi disliked his Nei agents. They had all the imagination and creativity of a concussed lemming outside of combat. Not to mention being unable to sense the conversational landmine inherent in
threatening to rape and kidnap a kunoichi. Apparently, still, they were far more useful in combat than other shinobi. In his opinion at least. And they could never become nuke nin. Power and loyalty were the two main attributes that he cared for in shinobi. Too much of the former without enough of the latter was a recipe for disaster. The matter of the weapon decided for the moment, Danzo decided to head home for the day. He had a nice warm bath awaiting him there to soothe the aches of his battered and aged body. Age, he mused, was a royal pain. That's all for today. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the story. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.